Good afternoon. It's Tuesday, December 8th, 2015, and it is 1 o'clock Eastern Time. This is Advancement Live. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Andrew Gosen, and I'm joined today on a special All Ithaca episode by Cornell's Ashley Budd and Ithaca College's Mike O'Neill. On today's live broadcast, we are talking about paid content on social media. I know. For some, especially those who can remember the heady days of 2009 and 2010, this is a touchy topic. Social media used to be free back in those carefree, fancy-free days. We spent all of this time building up audiences on the various platforms, and we started figuring out how to produce content that was going to appeal to our people. And suddenly the platforms changed. Reach started shrinking. We started hearing more and more from the platforms about advertising opportunities. And it felt like an unspoken gentleman's agreement was somehow being broken by the platforms, and some of us aren't quite over that yet. I sort of include myself in that category. But as my colleague Keith Hannon likes to say, even in the days prior to paid content, social media was only free if your time is worth nothing. You can make a good case today that while social media may no longer be free, it's still a very reasonably priced medium relative to other advertising media. And with the emergence of some new ways to target content over the past 18 to 12 months, we may be heading into a world that gives us levels of precision in getting certain content in front of certain people that we haven't seen before. And we are about to talk about all of these issues and more. Before getting started, however, I'd like to take a minute to thank our sponsors. Advancement Live is part of the Higher Ed Live Network, offering viewers direct access to the best and brightest minds in education. Live webcasts allow viewers to share knowledge and participate in discussions around the most important issues in the industry. All episodes of Advancement Live are free and accessible in the video archives at higheredlive.com and in podcast format on iTunes. Today's live broadcast is made possible by iModules. iModules software is the leading constituent engagement management provider for educational institutions. iModules delivers an integrated online platform, transforming how institutions strengthen constituent relationships and achieve fundraising success. iModules, thank you for your support. Higher Ed Live is produced by M. Stoner, a marketing and communications firm that works with education institutions on branding, strategy, web design, and more. In higher ed, the degree is the product. Your program pages are some of the most marketing critical in your website. If you're interested in getting M. Stoner's model to building effective program pages and spending some quality time with one of their experts, check out the link that we are about to tweet, where you can learn more. M. Stoner, thank you for making this possible. And now I'd like to introduce our guests. First up, we have Ashley Budd from Cornell University. Ashley is a digital strategist and designer based in upstate New York. She specializes in bringing offline experiences online. She is the Assistant Director of Digital Innovation at Cornell University, serving alumni affairs and development. Prior to joining the team at Cornell, Ashley spent more than 5 years in enrollment management and career services at the Rochester Institute of Technology. She speaks about college admissions, digital fundraising, communications, and media technologies. Mike O'Neill has 11 years experience in higher ed. He hails from Ithaca College, that's the South Hill of Ithaca, as opposed to Cornell, which is the East Hill. He is a photo enthusiast, comic book geek, and social media junkie. He manages all of the social media for Ithaca College and the Ithaca College Alumni Association. He helps campus partners strategize on the best ways to utilize social media for their respective needs. And prior to joining the team at IC, Mike ran the social media for the Rensselaer Alumni Association at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. Ashley and Mike, thank you so much for joining me today. And let's dive right on in with the key question that I think many of our viewers may have in mind. What made you decide that taking the paid social media plunge was becoming a necessity, not a luxury? Mike, could we start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually, when I got here at Ithaca College, actually had already started working on a plan to do paid advertising for admissions, and so I've kind of taken that over, and we're kind of working on new ways of doing it. But you know, it for us it was really important because we're able to get to the people in the places where they are. So they're constantly on Facebook and on other social media platforms, especially the prospective students. So it was really important for us to be able to send out information to them and ask them to either sign up for a campus visit or eventually to apply online. And do it in a place where they already were in the first place. So plus the cost of it is so much cheaper than producing, printing, mailing tons of flyers that students more and more get so many flyers in general that a lot of times you see on social media pictures of the bulk amount of things that students get from a lot of colleges. So it's just a way to direct messages to them in a more efficient way, in a cheaper way.
A cheaper way. And what caused you to make the leap from counting on established audiences and organic reach to paid promotion of content?
I think because the idea that a lot of these students, again, for prospective students, they're not following us already, so they're not already going to be hearing our messages through what we're posting on our naturally or on our Facebook page or Twitter accounts. So it was important to be able to reach out to them and with paid advertisement because of that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Ashley, same question. What caused you to start playing around with the paid stuff instead of depending on organic reach?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting that Mike was going after folks that weren't already following the page because I'm just realizing that in the past couple of months that we have a whole nother opportunity there with folks that aren't following us. But I think where we started to see the change was among my own network. All of the folks that tune into Higher Ed Live and talk on Twitter are really chatty when things change, especially on Facebook, where we do a lot of our social work. And I think we started noticing really sharp declines in engagement at the same time. And so when that buzz started, there was a lot of media about having to pay to play with Facebook, and a lot of outrage, a lot of Facebook hate going on. But I think we were forced into trying. What would happen if we put $5 on this post? After seeing the results of how much more you can get out of a post when you put a little money behind it, helped us reach our followers that we were already had attached to our page, because we would look at a page of 20,000 folks for a certain affinity group and say, why are only 3 people liking this? This doesn't make sense. We have so many followers. It turned out that the algorithms were not on our side. So I think we got strong-armed by Facebook. I think that's the answer into taking the paid plunge. And as they've developed their advertising platform over the past year or so, I think they've turned me on to new strategies, new content strategies in social that I hadn't thought of before. So I guess I'm on the spectrum of love and hate with Facebook. I'm a little farther away from the hate right now.
Yeah, I remember the morning when I think somebody did the calculation and figured out that organic reach was down to 6%, and the sort of incendiary commentary that was taking place on several of the bigger higher ed social media hashtags. But I really agree with your point, Ashley, that the emergence of some of these tools to target, in some cases, theoretically, you could go down to targeting a particular individual, and maybe we'll talk about some scenarios that involve that later on in the show. It's really opening up some interesting new possibilities and helping us think about things that weren't possible before. But before we get to that sort of highly theoretical question, just a question to both of you, since I know you both work with partner organizations on campus, helping them understand how to use social better to achieve their business goals. What extent do you think, to what extent do you think people in general who are running Facebook pages on behalf of departments or colleges or units, how much awareness is there outside of the core of the digital media folks that organic reach has shrunk to the extent that it has? I find that in my experience, you still encounter some people who don't have any idea that they're not reaching their entire fan base.
I think it's very little. I think if you're not in the Facebook advertising game, it's easy to ignore it. And what Facebook will put in front of page managers is the ability to boost posts, but it doesn't put tools like their Power Editor right in your face every time you're logging in. So if you're not actively seeking out advertising strategies on these platforms, it's going to be hidden from you, especially if you're in a platform like Twitter or LinkedIn. You got to do some digging before you get to their advertising tools. So I don't think it's necessarily page managers' fault, but I think there is a big gap between what's available and what they know is available. I remember Matt Hames, if you're watching, from Colgate tweeted that if you're not using Power Editor, you're doing it wrong. And I was not using Power Editor at the time, and I looked at it it took me all of 3 seconds to look at Power Editor and said, oh my gosh, I'm doing it wrong. So it can be buried even for folks that are looking at this stuff all the time. If you're not paying attention to new releases, they're always up to something. They released Instagram ads through Facebook Ad Manager in the past 6 months, and if you didn't know that, it would have been, it wouldn't have showed up on your Facebook feed that Instagram ads are now available. You had to do some digging to see how to make that work.
Mike, what's your experience at IC been?
Yeah, I mean, I'll kind of echo a lot of that. Facebook is in it to make money. That is what their goal is right now. They're one of the biggest companies in the world because of the fact that they are monetizing their platform that everybody's on. So the fact that it shouldn't, I don't think it's just surprising any of us that when they do that promote or post button and make it easy for anybody to just drop $5, $10, $50, $100 to boost a post and not worry about whether or not that person knows who it's going to. That's the whole point. Is for them to make it easy for you to make or for them to make money and for you to feel like you're getting to the constituents that you want to get to, and it may not always be that way. So I've also found around campus that a lot of places or a lot of people don't. They're starting to get the idea that it's not reaching everybody, but there are still some groups that don't either know at all or haven't fully grasped how few people are actually not seeing their posts on Facebook, especially. So I think it's something that I talk about whenever I am have a meeting with someone to talk about their strategy of how to get their content out there more. I do talk about paying to play as well, and one of the things that I also find is that they're very hesitant to want to put any money in it whatsoever, when it's far easier to put money in and start to roll with ads, both for your followers of your page as well as people who aren't following, and who might be in the community if that's what that they want to talk about an event that's happening that they want community members to come to. So yeah, it's really, I think, important to kind of let people know that. But I do think that like what Ashley said, I only just found out within about a month or so ago that even though Instagram ads hadn't rolled out to my ad manager, I could actually do an Instagram ad if I went into Power Editor. So, and I had been in Power Editor before, but I didn't realize that I could do it if I did it through there. So there are tricks and ways to use the dashboards that they give you, and they don't always tell you how to do it, so you really have to get in there and kind of hunt around and see what they have. But not everybody has the time for that, so that's the challenge, I think, overall.
So I think this time issue is really very important, and just to give viewers a sense of how much time you all are spending working on paid social promotion each week, so they can get a sense of how much time they might have to spend to be able to notice these things as they pop up, as opposed to reading about them on Twitter or something like that. Mike, how many days a week would you say that you're using Ad Manager or Power Editor or Gray Facebook?
Well, I go into it just about every day, just to see how the ads are doing and that kind of thing. What I do is we have groups of times when we're doing new ads for whether it be for visiting, open house, the different kinds of application times. So there are different phases within our advertising. But I go into it almost every day, and just to see how the ads are doing, and are they getting to a point where people are seeing them too much in their feed, and it's making it actually turning them from doing what we're asking them to do, which is click on our links and sign up for things. So I definitely have to monitor that. So I go in there, time-wise, it's probably an hour a day, and then it's more than that if I'm uploading new sets of ads. So a new ad set will probably take me maybe a couple hours to upload and get it going. But that's with a lot of detail in the background. People can do it very easily within, I would say, a half an hour, just to start a couple of ads and get them rolling.
Great. Ash, how about you? How many days a week are you in these spaces?
Probably 2 or 3 days out of my week I'll touch it. I think your question about how much time do you spend keeping up on these kinds of releases, I attribute that to my social network, my professional social network, that I know I'm following people who are paying attention, and that they will tell me when these new releases happen. So I don't spend a whole lot of time going out and hunting for what Facebook is releasing, but I do make sure that I'm paying attention, especially on Twitter, is where I have the strongest professional social network, that I'm watching what people are talking about, because if something happens with Facebook advertising, I'm sure someone on my network will be noisy about it. So that helps keep my own research time down. I agree with Mike. The tools are pretty intuitive. It's hard it's hard to break it. It's hard to launch an ad without all of the components being plugged in there. They really won't let you. There's a lot of guidance for best practices, what kinds of images you should use, how many. The learning curve for actually going in and setting up an ad is very small. I think what's steeper is trying to align that with your own goals. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about conversion tracking later. But if you weren't in a media buying position before, going in and having a media buying component of your job role might be a new thing to tackle from a strategic standpoint. And so I think we've spent almost we've spent a solid 8 months experimenting with different kinds of offers and what we're putting out in social paid media, and trying our best to track whether those are making a dent in helping us reach those goals.
So I think that's actually the direction I'd love to move in at this point. It feels like figuring out how to use the tool is obviously one important piece of the puzzle, but another is either making the leap yourself or persuading somebody up the reporting chain from you to make the switch to this media buying mindset. If we're in a world where we're reasonably good with owned media and we've begun to appreciate earned media, one of the things that you always heard sort of 2010, 2011, 2012 was that one of the reasons that organizations ought to explore social is that it's a way to reach more of your constituents without having to spend money. And suddenly we're having to go back and say, you know what, that was great, but now we really need to think about budgeting for experimentation. So it feels to me like the most effective way to get out in front of that conversation is to run some small-scale experiments and actually demonstrate the impact of a certain spend. So for the next phase of this, could each of you give us a couple of examples of campaigns you've run, what you approximately spent running them, what you were trying to achieve, and how you actually measured the impact of that? Because it feels to me like these anecdotes of paid social success delivering on business goals is the best way to start this conversation with people who may need to be paying the bills. Mike, you want to tackle that first?
Sure. So this past summer, actually, I should say this past spring, we were advertising for a summer program that was going to be, again, this summer. So they wanted to try to do something new with the advertising that they'd been doing. Most of the advertising had been on campus in forms of flyers, posters, that kind of thing. So we talked to them about setting aside a small amount of that budget to use for Facebook ads as well. So and it doesn't need to be a lot. I think for that one we only set aside maybe about $1,000, which I think in some budgets is probably high, but it can be as small as 100 and actually be effective. But what we ended up doing was seeing that when it was all said and done, they ended up coming in with about $750,000 worth of commitments for the summer program, and it more than paid for itself for what they were looking for. So in the grand scheme of things, again, $1,000 for some places could be higher, but it could be pretty high budget-wise. But when it compares to the print media that we're using and putting out to places, and we don't really know what the if anybody saw that and came in and to sign up for something because of that, we can't put a bit.ly, or we could put a bit.ly on a poster and assume that they're going to put it on there, but it's usually easier, and we usually just put the normal website's link on there, and we don't really know with any tracking, how they got from A to B. So it's really great to be able to see that instantaneous conversion happening and being able to connect the dots of where they came from and how effective what you were doing was.
When you're doing the tracking, are you tracking the clicks, or are you able to actually track all the way through to registration?
So both. We track the clicks. So what I do is I always add a Google URL tracking code on the end of every link that we put in, and then I create a bit.ly and add that into each of the ads. So that way we can track every part of it. On my end, I can track the clicks and the number of clicks and the click-through rates, and then for the director of digital strategy here, he can look at the Google Analytics on the other end and see, from our website with this certain tracking code that I've added to the end of the link, what are they doing once they get there? So we're able to see both sides of it. Our website has a harder time sometimes seeing some of that probably than other places do. So I wish we had a little more freedom in that regard. But otherwise, yeah, it's definitely a good rule of thumb to start moving forward with, my a colleague of mine that has left here at IC, Colleen Clark. She did a really great job of really getting into me that we need to use these UTM codes, and I gotta say the Google tracking codes are key, in my opinion, to really helping us out to make that case of clicking on the ad or seeing the ad, clicking on the ad in Facebook, and then going to the website and then creating actions within there. So adding the Facebook pixel on the website as well is really important in being able to track any kind of things that they're doing on there as well.
Great. So you had a very definite business goal there, the registrations, right?
Yep.
And you were able to divert some of the spend that you were already allocating to advertising this program, trying to drive registrations, deploy that on social, and then actually quantify the impact of those social ads on that bottom line.
Right. Correct.
That sounds like a beautiful, tight little sort of closed circle where you're showing directly that money spent this way can produce a result.
Yep.
Ashley, what's an example from your world?
Well, to pick just one is so hard. I guess where we've been testing has been with regional alumni events, where we were getting multiple requests from events happening all over the world, where our partners who were planning those events needed a boost in helping them with registration. So we're using the advertising to reach targeted audiences for those geographic locations. Mike mentioned the web pixel, which I think needs some explaining, and talking just about what kind of targeting you can do, I think will help our audience, our viewers understand what's different about just posting and selecting a geographic location and what the advertisements let you do. So if I could just run through those as examples of what we did. So first with the custom audiences, and a shout out to Kristen Gowan on Twitter, who's tweeting about an effective campaign that they did with current donors using custom audiences. This is one of the best features that I think Facebook has released, is the ability to upload your own contacts, if you will, into your advertising tool to target your people. So you're not just targeting your people that like your page or people that identify with your institution publicly on Facebook. You can actually take the list of folks that you've been hammering with this regional event through email and upload their email addresses into your ad manager. Facebook will match the email addresses with Facebook accounts. Twitter does the same thing. So if they use the email address that you have on file with their social account, these platforms will retarget those people with your ads. The nice kind of have your cake and eat it too piece of running ads like that is that when they see the ad displays, it'll have an additional call to action to like your page. So I was finding when we were promoting regional ads with email lists through Facebook, we were gaining a lot of Facebook likes for our page from people that didn't know we existed. And so pulling them into the fold, which is really, really cool. The other more unique offer that these platforms are giving folks is a web pixel. So they give you this little snippet of code that you can put on your website, and we'll tweet out a link of what exactly a web pixel is for the geeks in the audience. But it basically gives you a little snippet of code to put on your website, and then anyone who has visited your website, I think you can change the timing of this, but we have it set to anyone who's visited the Cornell alumni website in the past 30 days is created in your ad account manager as another audience. So this is how your shopping follows you around the internet, right? Like that pair of shoes that you were just looking at is somehow in your social accounts. Well, there's probably a tracking pixel on that page that you were on, and it's set to redeliver you that piece of content when you move around the internet. So those pixels are really, really interesting, and I've seen pretty high conversion with that, and I could see where it would be valuable for people who are doing multi-channel campaigns, driving folks to a website. That if you have that pixel on that website, you're almost guaranteed to be able to retarget them on social.
And it feels like a crucial point of difference here between this and conventional marketing. This is something that relates to a point Mike raised earlier, is that in the past you were spending lots of money to send out print materials that may or may not ever have been looked at, and to people who may or may not have been interested in your organization. But here, if you're doing the custom audience and the email addresses are coming from your database, you know that they're one of your constituents because that was in your database. And if you're doing the Facebook pixel approach, they were on your website. They took a step and they were there, and now you're going back out to them. So
right, maybe they saw the print piece that you sent out, and we don't have your email address, but the print piece sent them to the website, and now we've got you. We've got you with the pixel.
So it feels like here your spend is dramatically more efficient than the old print marketing approach. And obviously, as you point out, Ashley, the two can relate to each other nicely. But this is, in terms of making the case that this is something worth trying, the efficiency is one of the primary attractive elements, I would say.
Can I also just add in there that you can also target by phone number. So if especially cell phone numbers, if you have those, you can add that in there. And a lot of times people put their cell phone numbers, I know I do, on their Facebook page or profiles. So that's just another way that you can add that in there and target on top of the email addresses. So we do mostly email address targeting for custom audiences, but that is definitely another way. And then if you just know of certain people's email addresses that you just want to add one to one instead of dumping a database in, you can do that as well. So,
with the cell phone option, does that mean that you only get targeted on mobile, or does that just go to your account, be it on mobile?
It just adds to your account. Right. So you're targeting one person, but you are using their cell phone instead of their email address. So it still targets them on their profile.
So to what extent do you think all of this two-factor authentication stuff is actually a ploy to get people to make themselves more?
Probably a little bit. Probably a little bit. And I just want to clear up one thing that I said earlier that I misspoke about was in my process of creating ads, when I add the Google tag on the end of the URL, I don't actually create a bit.ly for the ad. I do create a bit.ly when I'm posting it on normal social media, but I misspoke there. So I know there's a couple tweets about that, so I just want to clear that up really quickly.
Great. Ashley, thank you for that overview of the options. And I guess you gave us a concrete example. So how are you measuring conversions there in those instances?
So conversion's been a little trickier for us because of the endpoint of our processes. And I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Are you hearing that, Andrew? Do you think you could mute for a second?
Sure.
So on the event registration side of things, we have an old tool that's sunsetting, but if you have kind of like a third-party registration tool, often your user path breaks. And so I can't actually see who from my ad actually converted to a registration because it breaks along the way in the chain. The same for our GIF processing tool, which is a real pain. And if you don't have control over the, we won't go too geeky. If you don't have control over those web pages and the ability to put the tracking mechanisms that you need in, which with some of these huge enterprise companies, they don't give you access to that part of the page. There's just no way to see actual conversion, and that's tough. And I don't know if anyone else has seen the kind of miscalculations that we see in some of these ads, but we ran a Giving Tuesday campaign, and it was really hard for us to see lots and lots of clicks, but really hard for us to see whether the gifts actually came through because of those clicks. So that continues to be a big challenge. What work? Some of them work really well. So if you don't have a point where your link is going to break, there are campaigns that you can run if you're just trying to drive people to a site. If you're just trying to do awareness over something, if you're trying to get views on a video, if those simple kinds of actions are fantastic. But for some of the more complicated ones, for us, when it deals with multiple websites in a conversion path, we have a little bit of a breakdown. Mike, do you have any similar examples, or have you figured that out with Google Analytics tracking in some magical way that I don't know?
I haven't, and to be honest, I'm not as a super user for Google Analytics, so I do more of the grunt work in the front, so that the people who are smarter than me in the back end, who do that well, can work their magic back there. So I don't, unfortunately. I have noticed, for things like iModules, though, what I would say was, what you want to do is, instead of, usually for Google UTM codes, they start with a question mark. If you change that to an ampersand, what I've found is those then start working for like iModules URLs. So that's what we have to do for ours. So that might work better for some people, but yeah, when it's other platforms, for the most part, it's harder to work out because they have so many different groups that are working within the same domain, that it's hard to get those to play together and find a way that they all work together.
So it sounds like theoretically conversion tracking is possible, but in practice it's not quite as clean and elegant as it could be otherwise. But it does sound like both of you are beginning to view this as a standard part of your business practice, as opposed to something that's experimental and maybe it will take, maybe it will not. On that front, could you each tell us a little bit about how you're envisioning expanding your use of paid social in the future?
Yeah. Did my sound? Okay, sorry about that. So what I'll say is we just started doing Instagram ads. So we're going in that direction. We're just doing one ad right now just to see how it works, because it's really the first time that we've finally kind of gotten that ability to have it start. But So far, it seems to be really successful. The other thing that we're trying to do in terms of the look of our ads is to do a less of a corporate look of our ads and try to really make them feel like they're part of the natural look of the Facebook feed, especially on Facebook. So, the way that the visuals look, the way that the wording is on in the ads, we're trying to make that more platform specific, so that it really again matches and blends well within their news feed and isn't jolting when they see it within their feeds. One of the biggest criticisms that I have of Instagram ads overall are, and I'm a big Instagram fan, so and I use it quite a lot. So when they first opened the floodgates for Instagram ads, there were a lot of places that would just throw up a graphic that they might put somewhere else, on Facebook or Twitter or something like that, and just throw it into Instagram and put it in front of your eyes and hope that you'll click on it. And it's just a terrible idea, because it's not. You really want your graphic to match what people are seeing or are used to seeing, especially on Instagram, for your campaigns. So that's something that we're working on, is to make sure, the ad that I'm running on Instagram right now, the graphic that I'm using is a compilation of 4 pictures from 4 different seasons, and it's a scenic spot on campus. But I had already posted it in Instagram in January, and it's one of the most popular pictures that we've had posted. So I knew that would do well, because it fits within that framework. So we're trying those kinds of things to see what works and what doesn't, how much our Instagram ad clicks going to be as opposed to Facebook ad click. Overall Facebook, but newsfeed versus mobile versus right side, which actually we've stopped doing right side ads at this point. So those are the kinds of things that we're doing. The other thing I'll just say real quickly too is about Instagram ads. What I found out is you do not have to have an Instagram account in order to do an Instagram ad. What it will do is it will show the name of your Facebook page and the profile image of your Facebook page in the top left corner of the Instagram ad. But when they try to click on it, it won't take them anywhere, because you don't have an Instagram account. So for anybody who doesn't have an Instagram account, it doesn't mean that you can't get into doing ads on Instagram. But what I would say to that is just make sure that you are knowledgeable enough about Instagram and how it works, and the things that the way that people create their images for Instagram, in order to make sure it again kind of falls in line with the look and feel of those feeds.
Mike, thanks. I really like the point you're making about the need to focus on look and feel. I think the more visual the platform is, the greater the danger of doing something that's so jarringly off that it's actually counterproductive.
Yeah, and more, I mean, everything is becoming more visual, and Twitter just announced yesterday that they are expanding their images so that they're not truncated anymore. So more and more everything is visual, and the visuals are getting bigger and bigger. So really trying to make sure that it locks in and fits naturally and seamlessly into those platforms, I think, is really important.
Yeah, I'm harboring a personal grievance right now against Burger King, because my Instagram feed tends to be very heavy on the nature and very heavy on the kayak stuff, and they just dropped this incredibly garish cheeseburger picture in there. And don't get me wrong, I love a cheeseburger, but not in my Instagram feed, and that was not the right photo to be dropping into my news feed anyway. It just upset me. It's going to take me a couple of months to get over that, I think. Ashley, how about you? Where do you see social going in your work? Or sorry, where do you see paid social going in your work?
Well, I think we're going to consult with Mike on Instagram ads. And if Burger King had only put a burrito in your feed, we would be excited about that, right? I think where we're going in the near future with advertising is continuing to experiment with some of these other platforms. I think we're really comfortable with Facebook. And I think Facebook at this point has the most bells and whistles available to be able to really customize to the audience that we want. And we have, quite frankly, a whole lot of people there on Facebook. So we spent a lot of time there in our experimental phase, and we're trying to formalize that now. I wanted to mention Twitter. We've done 3 ads on Twitter, and I haven't been super impressed with the results. And maybe it's just the kind of content, but things that I thought would really pack a punch didn't. So they seem to be blowing out their advertising platform much like Facebook did in the past year. They've released objective-based campaigns and are trying to guide you a little bit more on, are you trying to earn website clicks? Are you trying to earn video views? What is it you're trying to do? And then help you craft the right Twitter campaign for that. So we'll share a link about how those objective-based Twitter campaigns are rolling out, and maybe we'll get some better activity on them. But in the near future, we're really embracing gray Facebook. It's what we call it around our office. If you're not familiar with gray Facebook, it might be because you haven't set up your Facebook ad manager to the business account. And what's really cool from a process standpoint about moving everything into a business account is that you can manage multiple pages under one umbrella. And so we just met with someone from our accounts team to help us put all of the billing under one roof and be able to kind of streamline the tracking that we're doing for all the different program areas that we're working with and the different kinds of campaigns we're working with. So really trying to make this a more formalized business process than experimental free-for-all in our own small group like it's been in the past.
Thanks. I'd like to answer my own question and talk about some of the areas where I think there's real potential here. And this actually relates pretty closely to the sorts of things that Kristen was tweeting about earlier. I feel like the emergence of these custom audiences that relate to people who we already have inside of our database opens up a whole new range of opportunities for creating custom content with the goal of engaging a very tightly defined niche audience very specifically. I know I've been talking to Keith Hannon about this a lot. The notion is using some of this paid advertising to get what gift officers call proof of life, which is people who are gift officers have been trying to engage with in more conventional ways, and there's just nothing there. They're not getting any response. And if we know they're unsocial, which we can figure out by loading the email addresses into the custom audiences tool and seeing who we get hits on, and if we put very strongly flavored content out there, for the sake of argument, say something about sustainability, you can see what sort of activity you're getting off of that content in a way that I think helps you figure out what these people are interested in and what they aren't. And if you reduce that concept, or if you take it to its logical conclusion, you could imagine one person who you're very interested in, who you make a video for exclusively, and it's a custom audience of one. And you just publish it to their Facebook page or their news feed, and either they respond or they don't. But if they actually respond to it, then you know something about what they care about in a way that you didn't before, and you can probably accomplish that for 50 cents outside of the time you invest in creating the content to start with. So that ought to work in theory. I hope we get a chance to try it out in practice. But it's so exciting that we can even game out how that would work now, when we couldn't even talk about these things 6 months ago because the tools didn't exist, and we hadn't really become aware that there was potential here. I think for viewers, we're still very much in the early stages of higher ed advancement professionals playing around with these tools. This particular episode of Advancement Live actually has its origins back in the CASE Social Media and Community Conference in Miami this past spring, where we got to talking about paid social and asked the room, okay, who in the room is actually using paid social? And as I recall, the people that were actually doing it in more than just a 1 or 2 times way were Cornell, Ithaca College, and then Stanford. So we've got 2 of those 3 institutions represented right here. We're getting close to the end of our hour. We've got 10 minutes left, and I'd like to spend this final 10 minutes asking the 2 of you if you could share some resources you'd recommend to people who are interested in dipping their toe into this particular pool, fundamentals that you think you can't afford to neglect, even if you're just doing initial experiments, or anything else that you think that people who are beginning to test out these waters ought to think about.
One thing I would say to really think about and be cognizant of is when you're doing campaigns, when you're doing ads overall, especially if you're doing it through Ads Manager or Power Editor, either one. There are 3 levels. So it goes campaign, ad set, and ads. And the thing to be cognizant about, and the thing that Facebook changes all the time that's so frustrating, is everything that's unique about who you're targeting, how much money you're doing, where it's being placed, where all the different aspects of the ads are on the ad set level. So if you're going to have a chunk of money, let's say for visit, so you want your people to visit your campus, but you want to break it out so that it's being posted on the news feed, in the mobile feed, and let's say Instagram. But you want to track each of those 3 different areas separately. You have to either create different ad sets within you have to create different ad sets and then kind of break up the money, the overall chunk of money, so that it's kind of divvied out evenly. So that's one thing that I always kind of struggle with, because again, Facebook loves to tweak things and not tell anybody about it, and then you get in there and you start to do things the way you used to, and you find out it's changed, and it's frustrating. So that is one of the things that I would say. One of the resources that Facebook gives people is a grid that you can use in order to figure out if your graphic has more or less than 20% of it made up of wording. And that's a good tool to use because they are very strict about that. We've used ad graphics that have had a picture of somebody sitting in front of a whiteboard with mathematical algorithms behind them, and the mathematical algorithms behind them, according to Facebook, made up 20% of the wording. So it really, it took us a little while to figure out what that was, so we had to kind of mute that out a little bit and then re-upload the image into Facebook and try again. So those are the kind of things that I will say, but definitely look for that. And I believe Facebook gives you that link as you're setting it up and when you're looking for to add the graphic to your ad itself.
Good resource. I just actually dug it up and tweeted that out so that our followers can jump on that. And it's on the website that I go to for most of my questions, facebook.com/business or business.facebook.com. Go to the source. It would be my recommendation if you're looking for resources. If you're trying to start Twitter ads, go to their landing page and their resource page. There are blogs like Social Examiner that will write about these items, but be careful of when they were published, because if it was anything older than 8 weeks, it might not be relevant anymore. So I tend to go directly to the source. Facebook does a really great job of providing how-to guides, and Twitter does too. Don't count them out. It's like a whole nother world that exists in Facebook when you go to their business pages, and they're a good resource to point those other social media managers to, because if they don't know that these resources exist, they wouldn't know that this side of Facebook exists, or this side of Twitter exists. So I go right to the source. That would be my recommendation. There's also, as far as speccing out your ads, you can get most of what you need, like Mike said, right in the workflow process. If your image isn't the right size, it's gonna reject it. If it has too much text, it's gonna get rejected. Another pro tip, like Mike was saying about the setting up your campaigns correctly. Also check when you're setting up your budgets. If you have a cap on your budget, and what level that's set at. If you have it set at your account level to cap something, once you reach that max, your ads aren't going to be sending anymore. So if you go in and you're really confused why the ad that says it's scheduled to go isn't getting, or the ad that says it's live isn't getting any clicks on it, it's probably because you don't have any money in the bank. So there are some pro tips out there. Again, use your social networks, reach out to folks like Mike and myself, and ask questions, and join our conversation after this.
Well, Ashley and Mike, we're close to the end of our hour here. Thank you so much. This has been a really illuminating 50 minutes or so. I hope everybody who's been watching has gotten some information that will help them orient themselves to this new dimension of social, and hopefully make an effective case for trying it out. Mike, with your anecdote there about the math in the background, I'm internally cracking up over the notion of Facebook using an algorithm to determine that there's too much math in the background of the image. That just folds back in itself in a way that entertains me a lot. Thank you so much, Ashley and Mike. Thank you to the viewers who've tuned in over the past hour. Once again, thank you to our sponsors, M. Stoner and iModules. We really appreciate to share this sort of conversation with the broader advancement community. And that is it for today. As always, this show will be available on the archives at higheredlife.com, or as a podcast on iTunes. That's it for today. My co-host, Kim Brown, will be back next week. And with that, over and out from Ithaca. Thanks to everybody who tuned in live.